25th, 2025, Tuesday, and it's 2 o'clock. We're here to discuss funding for planning and zoning disaster vehicles, and I will turn it over to you guys.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan Martinson, Administrator, for our record. Do you want to do, after last meeting when we had them joined, we split the requests apart into one for disaster services and one for planning and zoning. Which one do you want to do first?
Let's do disaster services. I see where you have, they're both the same vehicles.
The bids are the same.
Bids are the same.
So
now my question is on the disaster vehicle. Before we talked about how did the county pay for the pickup before, or was it part of a grant?
It was part of a grant project through Healthcare Coalition, which is the group of hospitals and medical care facilities, including Panhandle Health District. So they did a multi-county deal where they bought vehicles, the mass casualty unit trailer, and then a storage facility to store it in. So we got the pickup, we got the trailer full of equipment, and then we got a garage built out at the Shoshone Medical Hospital. Okay. There's a garage built out there that was to store the trailer in. At that time, because it was a disaster services / county asset, it went into the inventory as a emergency management vehicle, and it was used by the emergency manager for that purpose. And then the original intent was that pickup was to be used to haul that trailer to events or scenes. And that's why we've had it and used it for that purpose. We've never had to pull the trailer to a scene at this point. So that's how we procured it. That's how we owned it. Of course, we've owned it for since 2005 or 6, whatever that was. It's 20.
And one of the things I'm looking
truck,
at is disaster services it's a part-time, right? Part-time position?
It's currently funded at halftime, yes.
Funded at halftime. Okay. So I'm just looking down in the future. I'm looking for the future. So, if you weren't at disaster services, we'd be providing a vehicle for a part-time position.
Correct.
And that's kind of the crux that I'm kind of thinking about is how do we, we deal with that, and it is an extra expense. And right now we're sharing the vehicle with planning and zoning because
that particular vehicle, I drive it as the emergency manager.
Yeah.
Planning and zoning uses their own vehicle.
But are we sharing planning and zoning's vehicle with disaster services, the one that they have now, just a little bit?
I've driven it, yes. Yeah. So essentially, yes.
Can we compete? Can we share it for the meantime, or what I'm looking at is we have a vehicle for disaster services, and I understand came from a grant, but I'm looking at it as long term.
Sure.
Does it require a vehicle? Are we buying a vehicle for? Does it require? Are you traveling? Do you do a lot of travel? So
part of the rationalization is, yes, I travel a lot for meetings and trainings. I'm often back and forth across the valley to go to meetings and hold meetings and facilitate meetings. During an event, I would be subject to respond to some degree. I'm not a first responder, I would make that clear, but when an event is happening and the emergency manager needs to be able to get to where he needs to get to an emergency operations center and facilitate that event, disaster event. It was purchased as a vehicle for the department, and the department had it. So it was always an amenity to have. When I came on, when I proposed to the board that I would be able to do both positions, part of the compensation package was that I would have a vehicle to drive. So we had a vehicle that was ready to do that. It was a relatively easy decision, but it was part of the compensation of the dollar amount for my position.
Then you came back to this.
So we went half and half, and so I was half P&Z and half emergency management. P&Z had a vehicle, has always had a vehicle for its purposes, So we utilized both vehicles
Okay.
the past 6 years, 7 years.
Mr. Chairman, I've talked with Dan and Trish in the department here a little bit. One thought to consider would be, we have one current vehicle in planning and zoning, a used car. What if we transferred the used car to emergency, and I'm just brainstorming here, to emergency instead of putting a new car, and then we purchased a appropriate vehicle for planning and zoning that could get up to the job sites and do the things that we're talking about. That way we could get away with one purchase instead of two. It's just an idea.
And that's for, well, and then we have planning and zoning and the building inspector. So
I think that's what he meant was.
That's what I mean.
That's what he meant
just
was.
getting one.
Just buy one vehicle, give this new vehicle to the building inspector, take the current P&Z used vehicle, transfer it to emergency services, which is also P&Z, and just go with one purchase.
Okay.
And I think going along with the original premise was the shared vehicle between P&Z and emergency management. Yes, and that could very absolutely happen. So it could still be used for going on site visits for floodplain and postings and stuff for planning and zoning stuff, but as well as whatever I needed for emergency management, that could work.
Okay.
That would cut our costs.
It's a used vehicle, but it's only a year old.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now we're at the other vehicle for the vehicle that we're talking about. You know,
For planning and zoning.
planning and
Okay.
for planning and zoning and
Building official.
Building
official. Yeah. That's right. They're all in one.
Yep.
Okay. That's what's I messed up. So
So the bids were the same. It was for the same type of vehicle. It was either for a mid-sized vehicle, a mid-sized pickup, a Canyon or GMC Colorado, or an equivalent SUV model like the Equinox type model. And those are the bids we were able to get. Those particular models, then that was part of the big conversation, was the appropriate vehicle that could enable, particularly James, to get to construction sites effectively.
Okay.
Having a vehicle with the four-wheel drive and the clearance capacity and all those kind of things is what's required versus the current vehicle doesn't provide that as well.
And the Equinox is pretty similar to a vehicle I drive. And I take mine all the way up to our property, which is by Short Creek on Longtong.
Yeah, and so we figured it was.
Saddle. And it's a good car. Gets you through the rugged. I'm just letting you know on that. And it does have a lot of room.
In my case, there's going to be periodically I'm going to have to carry a ladder with me. I don't know if you can just cram a ladder in one of those vehicles, but if I go down to the St. Joe, I'd really hate to fail the job because I don't have a ladder to get into the attic. That's a lot of resources to spend for me to go all the way down there. And if I just take a ladder with me, then I can just move on and not waste a trip, waste the hours, man hours to get down there.
And if you look at the bids, we've got a bid for as low as $30,248 for an Equinox model, and then down to $39,000 for a pickup. We haven't talked about the potential for what to do with the Dodge truck, whether to surplus it or whether it's can be made available for other departments to utilize as either parts or as a. It's got some mechanical issues, and it's the driving reason why we're wanting to replace it. So it's not necessarily something we necessarily want to just give to some other county employee because then we're in the same boat. But it could be, so we haven't really discussed that part of it yet as far as does it have any trade-in value? Does it have any surplus value as far as to balance the price out if there's some option there? And these prices were $9,000 difference, but close enough, close that it was, could be that could, if that could change the thought and process of reducing the price.
Yeah, that might be that. I didn't think about that. That might be a good point to do.
I don't know, you know,
What
I
is
don't
it?
know how much it's worth, you know, it's hard to.
What
it's
is
a-
it?
It's an 05
Okay,
Dodge 2500,
2,500. How many miles do I have on it?
110-ish.
Okay.
And so it's had some, it's mechanical issues, and so it's going to be depleted value from its normal value. So I hate to speculate right here, but
Yeah. So
I'm sure it's worth a few $1,000.
and then there
but,
was still the Ford Maverick, and what did it come in at?
that was a bid from the first round, and,
And
so
that
that
was
first round was high 29s or close to the 30.
30 as well.
But that was a vehicle that was basically like the Jeep we have. It was a car trying to be a truck, and so it wasn't going to provide the clearance and the overall capabilities that we.
I did go out and
Needed
test drive
to have-
one, and I don't think it's gonna.
Well, you know, I understand the clearance wise, but I too, I've lived here and lived in the areas where, in Cascade, where we've had dirt roads and
Lots of
everything, and, you know, I used to drive a little Ford Escort and could get it anywhere, and, you know, I understand the clearance part, but we're talking about another $10,000.
Well, and in my case, being an amputee,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I can still do my job on crutches. But if I have to walk up and down somebody's driveway that's muddier than sin or covered in snow,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of puts me in a jam. So, still want to be able to do my job and be effective at it, but not be extremely costly either.
Can we put
And
a
this one's
ladder rack
value-wise.
on a Equinox?
Yes.
You could put some sort of a rack on one.
I mean, my wife had one, and it seemed like there was room for that.
And they do get, I mean, I don't know about the Equinox, but I mean, you know, mine does well, and I have a lift kit on mine. So it's a good car.
Just trying to figure out how to make the lower bid work if we put a luggage or a rack specifically for hauling a ladder and things on it.
Well, I think it would be value more than just the cost of it. I mean, I don't know what the mechanic schedule is on those, the Equinox. I did do quite a bit on the Chevys. The Turbomax is the last vehicle that's seen a mechanic's the last since they've started making those, since they've been in production. You know, so it's kind of, you know, you get what you pay for. I don't know much about the Equinox. I didn't go out and test drive any of those, so I really can't.
Part of the other angle we were going at, I'll add on to, was the value of when you buy a new car, being able to have it worked on for warranty purposes and maintenance of the vehicle. Buy a dealership that's warranting the work, and we just don't have any Ford dealerships here, and so it'd be an exercise in getting the vehicle to a Ford dealership to have warranty work done on it. So value-wise, we think it would create greater value to have something that can be serviced with something here in the valley. And that's a GM. That would be a GM vehicle.
I would agree with that. That'd be a GM vehicle or a Dodge vehicle. The Dodge doesn't make a small pickup anymore.
No, and you know that was the whole part of the whole reason that Public Works has moved away from Dodges to Chevys is because of the reliability of the Dodge vehicles, and so we were going along with that and looking towards the Chevys and GMs, and so.
Okay.
I don't know how much a rack is for a car, but
Okay.
you know, and
Why don't we
kind
do
of
this?
thing,
Why don't we
it's
look
really-
and see what a trade-in with the vehicle, what the trade-in would be, and we'll come back and decide between the trade-in and the Equinox. And give you a little bit more time to go out and look at
And I
that.
haven't explored with any other department that might be able to put that truck to use in some way, shape, or form. So I don't know if the sheriff's department could use it, or Public Works has a use for it, or
I don't
or the
think
Parks
so.
Department. You know, I haven't looked for. Is there another alternative to
No, we've got vehicles.
needs in the county that it can be used for versus the trade-in? I think is what I'm getting at is it might be worth more as a other vehicle
Yeah,
for
but-
another
but if-
department
but if it
rather
has-
than the trade-in
But if it
value.
does have problems, like you said, the front end problems, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of it as a snowplow truck or a part, it's an awful nice truck to make it a parts truck.
Mhm.
It is clean and new and newish, 20 years, but it's in good shape that way. It's just mechanically got those,
Yeah,
particularly the suspension problems. So, just as a thought that if we were looking to purchase a vehicle for parts or something, this would not be a
yeah,
bad fill.
and I don't think I think where they're getting away from those at the, roads department as well.
For sure, no, 100%. They do still have some.
think-
So I just wanted to mention that before
Okay.
because it may have more value than cash. So, but certainly we can go look at getting a trade-in estimate. And if that helps you decide between
Yeah.
one or the other,
Yeah.
then
Let's do that.
it might make it close enough. And
And if you're gonna take the time to do that, do we wanna go ahead and explore the cost of a solution for a rack of some sort on the Equinox? Cause otherwise buying an Equinox doesn't do us any good.
well, especially if it's going to be,
Yep.
I can't imagine it's more than
Okay.
$1,000 for a rack and a ladder, but you never know.
Just
Might
did
be.
a quick Google and you can get a pretty heavy duty roof rack for under $1,000.
Okay, let's do that and see what
Yeah.
the cost difference between the two
Come together.
come together
Yeah.
on between those two, and then, because you'll be increasing the cost of with the roof rack,
Mhm.
and you'll be decreasing, yeah, so, okay.
All right then. When we have those, we'll reschedule.
All right, sounds good.
If I could add a little for the next one, because assuming the next one will be a decision, a part of the process, because it's over the 10,000, is the justification that you guys are going to go through with this.
Mhm.
It may not be the lowest dollar amount that you get in from them, it may just be the best vehicle. So in contemplating the justification of not taking the lowest price, what you would like to evaluate, and kind of what I've pulled is the capacity, how is it going to be used, where does it need to get to, the different terrains that you need and the different clearances, the ladder capacity, and the proximity to repairs and maintenance. How close is that, and what is the total cost of ownership? So just as you're reviewing the next round of dollars,
Okay.
kind of contemplate what those look like for you.
All right.
Well, and then if whatever vehicle I get is being maintenance, what am I using to do my inspections? Because can't necessarily take the shared vehicle that they're using because they may be using it or posting. So
Probably gonna have
I'm
to
sure
do
we
some
can find a way.
coordinating.
Yeah, we'd have to
or,
do some
or
coordinating.
use my
like-
personal rig, which I don't like because then that kind of exposes me personally.
Well, any vehicle.
We'll coordinate a way.
Yeah, any vehicle is gonna be that way, if something happened to the vehicle, then we'd have to figure out, have to pull a vehicle from somewhere else to use it.
I'll have to go do the inspections.
Yeah.
Kidding.
Put him in his personal
Kidding.
vehicle,
Right?
I'm not qualified.
Do we have any other questions?
Put his name on the back and his phone number.
Any other questions here? No? Okay, we're adjourned.
Good, we'll
Thank
go
you.
get a
Thanks.